Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Policy Palooza. My name is Abby Cohen, and I'm the Manager of Partner Engagement here at DCPS. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really glad to see everyone here. We're going to go ahead and get started since we have a pretty big group already. As usual, I do want to flag that our presentation today has a lot of information. We have designed this deck to be a really robust resource that we hope you will refer back to throughout the year. So please don't feel like you need to leave today with everything memorized, and know that we'll be sharing the deck and the recording with folks once we conclude today. So thank you in advance for your attention. Please don't hesitate to put questions in the chat. You'll see that there's an option for a chat and a Q&A. We would ask that you put your questions in the chat so that we see everything come through. And as I mentioned, we will circulate the recording and PowerPoint deck after today's training. So here's our quick agenda for today. We're going to start with a few objectives for today's training, and then we'll dive into an overview of the partnerships team structure. We'll do a quick review of DCPS's new strategic plan, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of today's conversation, which are the requirements for school program providers. We'll share a couple policy updates and reminders, and review our systems and resources, and then certainly leave time for questions at the end. We are going to hold on questions until the end, but like I mentioned, please feel free to put questions in the chat, and we'll make sure to circle back. Today's session will be an overview of the processes and procedures for being a DCPS school program provider for this upcoming school year 24-25. Like I mentioned, today's presentation does have a lot of information, but we've designed it that way so that you can use this deck as a resource in the year ahead. We will not go through every detail on every slide, but the deck does include a lot of links and references, so that you can go back and look at anything as needed. And you can, of course, always reach out to us with any questions. So our objectives for today are to really make sure that folks have a clear understanding of everything that needs to happen in order to be a school program provider working with our students. We want to make sure you understand how this work fits into our new 5-year strategic plan, and that you know what sort of systems and resources our team has to offer to support your efforts over the next school year. So now let's just take a quick refresher on the DCPS partnerships team. So this spring, our team combined forces with the DCPS communications team, and we are now the Office of External Affairs, which is led by Chief of Communications Kirt Tyler. Together, Katie and I make up the partnerships and donations team, and we are led by Sarah Parker, who is our Officer of Engagement and Partnerships. We are also really excited to have Amanda Holloway joining us this summer as our Education Pioneers Fellow, and she is working with Katie to do, among many other things, further optimize our partnerships database. So to help set some sort of broader context for today's conversation, we wanted to make sure that we took time to briefly touch on DCPS's new strategic plan. The capital commitment is the latest iteration of DCPS's 5-year strategic plan. Our plan is grounded in our equity imperative, and its success is rooted in our ability to serve our students furthest from opportunity. To meet the goals of the capital commitment, we will provide intensive, targeted support based on need to eliminate barriers to academic and social success for our Black, Hispanic, Latino students, our students receiving special education services, and our multilingual learners. We have 3 strategic priority areas, which are succeed academically, connected to school, and prepared for what's next. Today, we're going to focus on strategic priority number 2, connected to school. There has never been a more important time to ensure that our students are safe and feel they are a valued part of the DCPS community. Student safety and well-being are paramount to a successful educational environment. And to ensure that students feel connected to school, DCPS will continue to provide safe, supportive, and culturally affirming learning spaces while prioritizing meaningful relationships among students, families, educators, and our greater community. So what does it look like when students feel connected to school? It looks like 2 things for our work. DCPS students are safe and have a sense of belonging, and DCPS students have equitable access to opportunities. Critical opportunities like expanded out-of-school time programming and experiential learning. Over the next 5 years, our team, in collaboration with schools and teams here at Central Services, will assess existing after-school programming, internal and external to DCPS, to identify gaps related to students and schools served, program offerings, and barriers to access. In alignment with the Mayor's My After School DC initiative, we will develop an evidence-based district-wide approach to increase after-school programming. And last but not least, we will work to streamline, clarify, and formalize partner policies and compliance processes. There is a lot more to come, but there will be opportunities for formal and informal engagement so that you can inform this work. So we will be reaching out over the next several months with more details. So please stay tuned. All right, and with that, I will turn it over to Katie, who's going to dive into our next section.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm the coordinator for partnerships and donations with DCPS. As the partnerships team, we work primarily with a subset of partners that we call school program providers. So what is a school program provider? A school program provider, or an SPP, is an organization that provides their own programming to DCPS students, works with students 3 or more times per school year, and is not a health or mental health provider. Those providers should complete a separate application process through the school mental health and health services team. Here are some examples of what DCPS would and would not consider a school program provider. A school program provider includes tutoring programs, mentoring programs, dance class providers, aftercare providers, and more. What would not be considered an SPP are things like field trip opportunities, volunteer groups, dental health providers, and curriculum vendors. Because our SPPs work so closely with DCPS, there are policies and procedures they must follow to protect our students in the district. This slide is an overview of all the requirements for SPPs, which we will review in more depth in the coming slides. We really rely on schools and our providers to ensure all these steps are complete before programming begins. We know this is a lot of information. There are a lot of boxes to check. So we encourage you to use the tools on our website to help you figure out where to start and ensure you have all the requirements in place prior to the start of programming. You can check out our website, dcpspartnerships.com, for a couple of our resources, including the Partner Preparedness Checklist and the Where Do I Start quiz. So the first step to becoming an SPP is registering in our partnerships database. This registration allows your organization to share information with schools about your programming, while also ensuring you are aware of our policies and procedures before moving forward with working with the district. Additionally, this is how we collect contact information for our partners to communicate key updates from our office via email and our newsletter. The registration is reconfirmed annually in order to stay active in our database. This registration confirms, or reconfirmation confirms, in the summer, so please look out for communication in the coming weeks about confirming your status. All right, time for a pop quiz. Make sure you're paying attention during this lunch hour. So just make note to yourself, true or false, an organization providing health or mental health services is considered a school program provider. Great, the answer here is false, which I'm seeing come up in the chat too. So yes, the health or mental health providers are not considered school program providers. Those organizations should go through the separate vetting process with our school mental health and health services team and should not register as an SPP. After registering in the database, the next step is to find a school or central services team to partner with. If you have not already identified a school or central services program team to partner with, here are some tips. You can reach out to a school that's in your neighborhood. We certainly encourage you to connect to members in your community. You can email principals and schools with whom you're interested in partnering to discuss your programming and its benefits to students. One really great resource is the school's comprehensive school plans, where you can learn about each school's priorities for the year. So that's a great place to start in order to show principals how you're aligned. You can reach out to us to see if there are any specific needs that your programming may address, or you can contact relevant central services content teams and demonstrate how your program is aligned with our DCPS strategic priorities. And we have some more information and guidance that you can find on our website as well. The third and typically the longest part of this process is obtaining a formal agreement with DCPS. In addition to registering in the database, all SPPs must have an official agreement with the district. This can either be a memorandum of agreement if you are not invoicing DCPS directly, or a purchase order if you are invoicing directly. Please note that if a school's PTO or another entity is providing funding for programming, or families are being charged directly, you still require an MOA. This includes partners that are funded through other DC government grants. These school program provider MOAs are typically good for 5 years unless stated otherwise. Contracts and purchase orders, on the other hand, are typically managed by the school and issued by the Central Services Office of Contracts and Acquisitions, and expire at the end of each fiscal year, which is September 30th. You must be registered as a DC government vendor to be issued a PO and receive payment. We know there are a lot of steps to this process as well, so we've provided some updated guidance on our website on how to register as a vendor. One important note here, school principals are not allowed to sign agreements with SPPs. They must be signed by the DCPS chancellor or contracting officer, depending on whether it's an MOA or a PO. There are some cases where schools can sign what we call partner acknowledgement forms that outline logistical items and general rules and expectations, and do not include any legal language. And if there are any questions about this, please feel free to reach out. For SPPs who are not charging DCPS directly for services, you can check the DCPS partnerships database to see whether you have an MOA on file and its expiration date. If you need a copy of your MOA, you can reach out to our team. And if you are a paid program provider, you can check the DC vendor portal or contact your school or central services POC for confirmation of your purchase order. This slide represents a quick overview of the MOA process, but the main thing we'd like you to take away is that this can take time to complete. It's very important to begin this process well in advance to prevent any delays in starting programming. We estimate that the MOA process can take around 90 days, but we certainly see it take longer. So please plan accordingly if you need a new MOA or need to renew your existing one. One of the most time-consuming parts of this process is getting your insurance in place. You can see here, I won't go through all of these steps, but the insurance process and review process, there are several steps, and it has to go through multiple agencies, particularly the DC Office of Risk Management. We ask that you please work closely with your insurance brokers to ensure you are submitting all requested information for review to the DC Office of Risk Management to prevent any delays and unnecessary back and forth. If you are a Learn24 grantee and you've already gone through this process with the DME, when requesting your MOA with DCPS, please share your current COI and email confirmation from Learn24 of your insurance and compliance, and that will help expedite the process. As shown in the previous slide, insurance requirements are determined by the DC Office of Risk Management based on the details of your programming. Although these requirements may vary, all SPPs should expect to see the following requirements. That's commercial general liability, auto insurance, sexual abuse and molestation or SAM insurance, cyber liability insurance, and umbrella and excess liability. Any insurance negotiations will need to be done through DC ORM, and we can support you with that communication. Please note that neither DC ORM nor DC Public Schools are able to recommend insurance providers. All right, so another pop quiz question. The principal at the school in which I'm providing programming should sign my DCPS MOA. True or false? This is false. Principals cannot sign MOAs. They must be signed by the DCPS chancellor. All right, I am going to turn this back over to Abby to talk about clearances now.
Thanks, Katie. Shout out to everyone getting on these pop quizzes, right? I love to see that. Step 4 is really important. We need to make sure that all staff and volunteers who are working with our students, whether virtually or in person, have completed the DCPS clearance process. So DCPS requires that all individuals who are providing services, again, whether in person or virtually, complete the DCPS clearance process before providing services. Cleared individuals will receive a DCPS clearance letter, which should be kept for their records and provided to you, the program contact, so that you can maintain your own records. DCPS clearances are valid for 2 years, which is great. And I do want to underscore that DCPS does not accept clearances from any other jurisdiction or agency, including DCHR. So we know that sometimes other agencies might have you go through DCHR. You will need to complete the DCPS process, however, if you move into working directly with DCPS students. So the next 2 slides provide details on the different steps depending on what type of clearance you are hoping to receive. So if you are providing your services to DCPS students and receiving compensation for those services, whether through DCPS or through the partner organization, then you are considered a contractor and you follow the process that is laid out on the screen here. If you are an individual who is not being compensated for their work with DCPS, then you are considered a volunteer and you complete the process that's laid out on the screen here. One change to the process this year that we did share when it occurred a few months ago is the inclusion of the application station platform. So there's been no change to the requirements, but you now schedule your field print appointment to do your fingerprinting through application stations. That's the same for contractors and volunteers. So please just note that slight change, process change. On this slide, you'll see a side-by-side comparison of the requirements depending on which type of clearance you are applying for. And you'll see that really the only difference is that drug test. So as a contractor, you do have to complete the mandatory drug and alcohol screening. And as a volunteer, you do not. Luckily, we do not get nearly as much outreach or questions about clearance process status now that the process has been ironed out and it really is moving much more quickly. But a couple tips and tricks we have learned over the last few years. First, please make sure that you are confirming that your staff and volunteers have active clearances before you are sending them out to schools or having them work with our students. Please, you can collect and track their clearance letters so that you know you have confirmation they are cleared. And we would also encourage you as a best practice to note when those clearances expire so you can proactively remind them to begin the renewal process. If you have questions about where your folks are in the process, before you reach out, please confirm with them that they have actually applied. This does happen a fair amount where we get a question about where someone is, but they haven't submitted their application yet. So please confirm with them that they have actually submitted their volunteer application or their clearance application. That way we have a record of them. When they apply, we do encourage them to list your organization's email as the secondary point of contact on their clearance application. That allows the clearance team to reach out directly to you if they have any questions and sort of cut out some of the middle people there. And then lastly, if you need an update on individual clearance status, you can reach out directly to the DCPS clearance team for status updates, and they will just need the list of individuals that you're looking for an update on with so their full name. Please make sure it's the name they use to apply, which is sometimes their legal name, which is sometimes different than the name they go by, and then either the last 4 digits of their social security number or their birthday. The 5th step is to enter into a facilities use agreement with the Department of General Services if you're operating outside of regular school hours. So all program providers using DCPS space outside of school hours must submit an application to use facilities to the Department of General Services Realty Office at least 20 business days before you expect to begin programming. There is an insurance check that goes with the facilities use agreement process, so it does take a little bit of time. So I really encourage you to start that process as soon as possible. We work in close collaboration with the Realty Office. They are also a small team processing use requests for government buildings across the city. So the more time you can build into your process, the better. These applications must be signed by the DCPS principal of the school you're hoping to use space in. And then it's your job as the requesting organization to email that signed application to the Realty Office. Like I mentioned, DGS will ask for a certificate of insurance, or there will be an insurance check. And as part of that, DGS is going to ask for a certificate of insurance with the DC government listed as the insured. And then once that you're deemed compliant, then you will get a lengthy agreement with all the information about your facilities use that you will sign. And then once that is signed, you have an executed facility use agreement. And depending on several factors, school program providers may be charged fees for rent, security, or custodial overtime. So with that, I will turn it back over to Katie.
Great, thanks, Abby. So the last thing I'm going to go over is obtaining a donation agreement. So this step is for providers who are offering free programming to DCPS. These organizations that are providing free programming must register their donation to the district as dictated by the mayor's office. This is a relatively quick process that's laid out here, especially compared to the other processes that we've gone through today. And not only is this a legal requirement of the district, but this process also allows us to demonstrate to DCPS leadership and the DCPS community the extraordinary value you all are bringing to our schools. So we ask you to please complete this process. This is done on an annual basis. Even if you do have a 5-year MOA with DCPS, we ask that you complete the donation agreement annually, and we will send out reminders at the beginning of the school year. All right, one last pop quiz for today. If you have a clearance with DCHR, do you also need to complete the DCPS clearance process? True or false? This is false. All providers and volunteers must be cleared through the DCPS clearance process. No other clearances will be accepted. I'm going to leave this page up for a bit. If you want to screenshot it, it is an overview of all the requirements that we discussed today, including where you can find more information and the best point of contact for each step. As Abby mentioned, we will also be posting a recording on our website so you can access this chart again. And also each step of the process is clearly outlined on our website, and there are more details that you can find there. So in addition to the requirements we just reviewed, there are other DCPS policies and expectations for school program providers to be mindful of. So I'm going to turn it over to Abby for these additional reminders.
Thanks, Katie. Like Katie said, what we just covered is really about preparing yourself to be ready to begin programming. And then there are some processes and requirements we want to make sure partners keep in mind as we actually begin programming and move into the school year. So the first is mandated reporter training. Anyone who works directly with students is classified as a mandated reporter. And so all DCPS volunteers, employees, and contractors working with students must take the mandated reporter training. You can complete the training virtually through DC's Child and Family Services Agency website, and you will receive a certificate upon completion. We get a lot of questions around mandated reporter and when to report. I just want to underscore that it is not our job as people working with kids to decide whether an accusation is legitimate. Our job is to report any instance of suspected or reported neglect or abuse. You cannot get in trouble for reporting, and we want to make sure that we leave it to the professionals to make the determination as to what the appropriate next steps are. But really want to underscore the importance of taking that training and making sure that you are reporting as appropriate when any instance of suspected or reported neglect or abuse, is on your radar. In a similar vein, we did want to also do a quick reminder on our incident reporting protocol. So we've had a couple of issues of non-compliance when it comes to the use of the incident reporting tool, and we know that there's a lot to keep track of, so we wanted to just take a few minutes to walk through it again today. If any incident regarding the behavior, safety, or health of a DCPS student or one of your staff occurs during programming or volunteers, the process below really must be followed. This is outlined in your MOAs, so it is a sort of requirement of being a DCPS partner. And so what we have here are the two processes that happen in parallel. There's school level responsibility, and then partner responsibility. And again, all of these things should be happening at the same time. You don't need to wait for the school to do their piece. Your role is to, as soon as the incident occurs or you're aware of an incident occurring, you would immediately alert your school-based point of contact. Most often that's your principal, the assistant principal, maybe the manager or director of strategy and logistics, but making sure that your school-based point of contact is made immediately aware of the incident that happened. You want to submit the report via our incident reporting form, which is linked here. It should also be linked in your MOA. It's a very straightforward Microsoft form where you put in the details of whatever incident occurs. And then you would alert the point of contact in your DCPS agreement, which is most likely my office. So that's our inbox. You can also always just reach out directly to me or to Katie. And then we will follow up both with your team, folks at the school, and folks here at Central Services to make sure the appropriate next steps happen. So please make sure that your program staff, both program management, but also those delivering programming at your program sites in our schools, are aware of this and understand their responsibility for reporting any incident that happens involving one of our students or your staff, so that we can make sure all the appropriate next steps are taken. The next piece is a new process that we're rolling out this year to handle accommodation requests from students or families. So if any student or family approaches your team about requesting an accommodation so their student can participate in the program, we are asking partners to submit the request through our accommodation request form. So it's very straightforward. I have a preview of the form on the next slide, but basically you can access the accommodation request form through the partnerships database. You do not need to log in to access it. We directly link here. We'll also be sending all of this out in a, sort of getting ready for the school year email. So you'll have these links there as well. You want to fill out the form with the requested information about your organization, the details of the accommodation request, and some information about the student or family who's making the request. And then you'll submit that form. It comes just to my team, and we will follow up as appropriate regarding the request and next steps. So on the next slide, you'll see a screenshot of the form. Hopefully you can read it. I know it looks kind of small, but basically, just as I outlined, it is a space for you to say who's making the request, a little bit of information about your organization, some details about the accommodation that's being requested, and then any context that's necessary for us to understand about where the request is coming from. Once this is submitted, our team will meet with a team of folks here at Central Services, and we'll be in touch about any next steps. And lastly, just a reminder about language access services. Any organization that's receiving district funding is required to comply with the DC Language Access Act, and DCPS itself is committed to serving students and families from diverse languages and backgrounds, and want to make sure that families receive information in a language that they understand to make sure that they can equitably access programming. So on our partnerships website, we have several resources and best practices shared by the DCPS Language Acquisition Division, including information on how to use the DC language line, which can help with real-time interpretation. So please make sure that you check out those resources. And as always, please reach out if you have any questions. All righty. So next, we're going to just do a quick review of some of our systems and resources. This is mostly a refresher for folks, but just so that everyone is aware, the DCPS Partnerships website is an awesome one-stop shop for everything you've ever wanted to know about what it means to be a DCPS partner. It has, all of our recordings and trainings. It has all of step-by-step instructions for each of the steps that we walk through today, detailed information on the DCPS clearance process, detailed information on the donations process. So if you have any questions or folks on your team have questions, this is a great place to start. It also includes links to the school partnerships database. Every organization has a partner ID and a profile. So we hope that you can go in there and make sure all your information is up to date. Like Katie said, we'll be launching the reconfirmation process soon. So this is a great opportunity to make sure that all your program details are accurate and up to date for the coming school year, because that is also what schools can see when they're looking through to identify new partners. Our school partnerships toolkit is a really great resource that is focused on, think about 5 key topics that seem to come up as the most frequent pain points when it comes to school community partnerships. So it's a really nice resource for helping folks norm with their school partners on these, important school level aspects of their partnership, things like making co-creating goals, using space, being clear about logistics and communication. So if you're going in to have start a new partnership with a school, perhaps there's a new leader in place, this is a great tool. This is a great resource to take a look at to help guide those initial conversations. A lot of templates. We are going through to update it this year. You'll see a lot of references to COVID and things like that, but the core content really remains evergreen. And last but definitely not least is just the DCPS resources, or the resources page on our website. We have links to lots of resources like the partnership toolkit, like the database, like the recordings from our fall lunch and learns, which really dove into DCPS topics that we heard from you all that you wanted to know more about. So please take a look and always reach out and let us know what else you'd like to see, because we want to make sure that we're continuing to build that resource out to be as helpful as possible. So with that, I will just turn it over to Amanda to talk a little bit about a new survey we're launching.
All right, thank you, Abby. So we have been working to advance the functionality of the partnerships database, and just to support you all as partners for a successful school year. So we have a QR code that links to the survey. You can also type in the shortened URL into your web browser. I know it will also be posted in the following newspaper for you guys to fill out and share your feedback.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. Yes, please make sure that you're opening up the survey before we dive into our questions. It should not take very long to complete, and it really will help inform a lot of the work that we're doing to optimize our resources and make sure that our team is supporting you all the best that we can. So with that, I think we can turn over to questions. Our team has been doing our best to answer things as they come through in the chat. A couple things I wanted to highlight that I saw come up. One is if you have staff who are being cleared either through another agency or your organization has its own clearance process, do they need to go through the DCPS clearance process? The answer is yes. For facilities use agreement, if you're in multiple DCPS facilities, you need to have a use agreement for each of those buildings. So, the more buildings you're in, the more time it takes to work with the principals to get those signatures, as many of our partners can attest to. So just another plug to start that process as soon as possible. I do see some questions about the security policy for next year. I know this is extremely top of mind for everyone. I don't have anything to share at this time, but I am hopeful that I'll have an update for you all in the coming days, and do really appreciate that that an answer is wanted on this. And so we are working hard to get that update for you. A question about the accommodation request form. So once that is submitted and comes to our team, we will convene a group of folks here at Central Services. We will bring in someone from the partner organization and folks from the school and have a conversation about what accommodation is being requested and what that might look like in terms of implementation. So I don't have the next steps will sort of depend on the unique context of each request, but that's sort of the process you can expect once the request is submitted. Yes, I would do the mandated reporter training annually. I have a question in the chat about if you're not a funded partner organization, can you use the translation you provide or require? So I believe the language access line is open to anybody, so any organization can use that. The Language Access Division does have limited resources to support on translating materials, so you can always reach out with the requests. It will just depend on their capacity to facilitate that. Question about purchase orders. That is not a process that our team oversees. So I would encourage you to work directly with your school. Usually your school-based point of contact is the one who's, submitting the requisition and helping to shepherd that process forward. So I would reach out to your school for updates on that process. Just looking through the chat. The DCPS clearance process, once you have a DCPS clearance, it's good for 2 years unless your role changes. So if you're cleared as a volunteer and then you get hired by the organization, then you would need to have a contractor clearance, and so you need to work to get that shifted. But if you are an return volunteer, you just want to make sure and your status isn't changing, or a return contractor and your status isn't changing, you just want to make sure that you're keeping that clearance up to date, and that'd be something you have to do every 2 years. A question about what's new about the DCPS clearance process. The only thing that's new is that you do your scheduling so FieldPrint is the company that you do fingerprinting through. It's great because they have locations around the country. So it's very convenient to go get your fingerprinting done. So instead of scheduling directly through FieldPrint, you now you schedule through something called Application Station. For those of you that have completed the process historically, there used to be a code that you would enter. You don't need that code anymore. That's that part of the process retired, and so now you just go through Application Station. So there's no change in clearance requirements. We just wanted to call out that there is that additional step of registering an Application Station so that you're able to set up your appointment through FieldPrint. Our understanding on the facilities use agreement, our understanding from the Department of General Services is that if you have an MOA with the school and you are operating during the school day, you do not need a facilities use agreement. But if you want to send us an email with that question, we can definitely confirm. Background checks do not go through Learn24. Learn24 is an office within the Deputy Mayor for Education's office. They do have a clearance requirement for their grantees, but that is separate from what DCPS requires. But typically they accept DCPS clearances. So I would work with your grant officer over there to confirm that. So the clearance requirement applies to anyone who's working with our students. So yes, I would presume that includes public library staff. A question about where you can see your MOA. So you can, I believe you should be able to see your MOA in your profile. And if you can't or you don't have a copy, you can always reach out to us and we can share it with you.
Yep, I was just responding to this one. So you can see your expiration date if you do have one, but if you need an actual copy of the document, you can reach out to us via email.
You do not have to be a DC-based organization to be a DCPS partner. Sandra, that's a great question. I'm happy to share that with the clearance team and let you know what they say. If you want to send that question to us, to the partnerships inbox, we can put the email in the chat. Just scrolling up to make sure we didn't miss anything.
One question here, if you do not see an expiration date on your profile, it probably means that either your M&A has not been finalized or maybe you have not started the process. If you have started the process, you will receive a confirmation when that is complete. But you can reach out to us if you have specific questions about where you are, get a status on what step you're at the process.
I just put a link to the partnerships website that has information about all of these steps, and also information on procurement if you're looking to get a purchase order. If you're a vendor and you need a purchase order or a contract, we do also have some resources there. So for the questions about, where can we find these steps, that's a great place to start. A question about what is on the application station intake form. I believe it's mostly information about the individual applicant. That's my understanding. There's no template, MOA template on the website. That's something that we would that we provide to you once you've initiated the MOA process and we receive your insurance information. If it's a student who's enrolled in a DCPS school, then they are a DCPS student. So being a part of a Head Start or early Head Start program, I don't believe would change that. It's a great question. Is there a closing window period? Meaning, is there a date that programs won't be able to get approval for the following school year? Right now, there is no application window. However, if you're hoping to get started at the beginning of the school year, we would encourage you to start that process as soon as possible, because at this point in the summer, there's no guarantee that we would be able to get everything in place in order for you to begin in late August, early September. Katie will probably have a better answer for this in terms of the question is, when do purchase orders expire? I believe that's indicated on the purchase order itself, but it's much more specific to the school year, unlike the MOAs, which are multi-year.
Yeah, that's correct. If it doesn't have a specific date on it, all purchase orders will expire by the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th.
Great question about programs that are operating outside of a DCPS building. It likely depends on the nature of your partnership with DCPS or the school. So obviously you wouldn't need a facilities use agreement because you're not using our space, but if you are partnering directly with the school, if the school is helping you recruit students, things like that, then you would likely need an agreement. So again, feel free to reach out to us directly so we can talk through the specific context of your organization. Again, if you have questions about the procurement process and your purchase order status, I would direct those questions to the school that is helping facilitate that for you, or the central services team you are working with directly. A question about if your application went in last month at the beginning of June, when can you expect to get approval? I assume this is referring to the memorandum of agreement application. The application or the process can take up to 90 days, and it mostly depends, as Katie has shared, on how quickly the insurance review process moves.
I see a question here about a program that's currently working with a school during the school day, but wants to now work during an after-school program. I would just ask that you please reach out to us. We can check the scope of the agreement that you have and see if any changes are needed.
Any final questions? As we've said several times, we know this is a lot. And so we appreciate you joining today. I think it is always helpful when we can provide a voiceover. We are always helpful to meet. We are always happy to meet one-on-one if you want to set up time to talk with us about the specific context of your organization and what you're hoping to do with DCPS. We're going to share our contact information shortly. And so please, feel free to reach out. All right, we'll hang out for a few more minutes, but that's the end of our content. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll share the recording and the deck as soon as the training is complete. And we just look forward to another successful school year with everyone.